Welcome back to another episode of the Course Creation Incubator Podcast. This is Gina Onativia. I'm your host, your bulldog, your coach, whatever you want to call me. I'm here to get you excited about your course creation and marketing. And by the way, quick reminder to make sure you're subscribed for this podcast because each and every week I'm giving you workshops or outstanding guests to make sure you're making true progress with your course creation and marketing. It's an interesting time right now for Course Creation Boutique. My team is really coming together. We're working on some cool new programs for the season and really working on my messaging and honing what I'm about and what I want to represent. And I've been writing for myself more than usual, and I gotta say, it's been pretty awesome. It's been a great exercise for me to get back in touch with my copy overall. And I've been writing for my podcast, for content, and for courses, a lot of stuff for courses, so all around. And one thing that's really stood out for me as I've been writing my copy, making sure my personality and my style are shining through, is my process. And how do I make sure that that happens? Because when I work for Tony Robbins, I wrote in his voice. When I work for Vistage International, I would help write in other people's voices in terms of letters for the community. Of course, I work with course creators in our Done For You service. And a lot of times I have to figure out how to write for experts and really capture their voice. And that itself is a skill set. And thinking through what is your voice really about and what makes it unique. This is important for you to know when you're first starting out. And then, of course, eventually you're going to have a writer who does this for you. So knowing those notes and what makes you unique is really critical in getting leverage on the writing process. So today I want to talk about how to hone your unique voice and copy. And I'm talking about this for a number of reasons. First and foremost, it sets you apart. We always talk about standing out from the competition, having the right voice that represents you, makes you unique, makes you stand out from other people. It also helps attract and repel your audience. So you're attracting the audience you really want to buy your course, and you're repelling the people who aren't right for you. You're saying, well, why are you doing it that way? Or I don't like your approach. Great. That's great. I'm not for you. And that's because of your copy and your voice. It also enables you to be instantly identifiable in terms of your copy. And it leaves people wanting more when you do it the right way. By the way, some of the greatest course creators I know, the most successful course creators I know, are great marketers and great copywriters of their own voice. My mentors, I think about Pam Hendrickson and Amy Porterfield. They're incredible writers of their own voice. They know what they stand for, and they know what they represent, and they know how to write it. They both started out writing their own copy and then hired writers as they learned to scale their business. But knowing how to write your copy when you're first starting out then will enable you to hire the right people and scale and grow your business in such a great way. So I want you to be crystal clear in terms of your voice, and I thought we could workshop that together. And I could talk through some of the steps I use to hone my own voice and my own writing when I work with myself or a new course creator or expert. And by the way, if you want to be coached by me in an upcoming episode, I would love for you to put in an application, coursecreationboutique.com/getcoachedbygina. Whatever it looks like for you, whether it's your idea or your topic or your scripts, or maybe it's your marketing or how to sell, let's talk through it. Check out the link for the application in the show notes. All right, so let's talk about what does it take to pull out your unique voice. And the first step is, if you're not already writing, start now. And it doesn't matter what kind of writing you do. It could be content-based. It could be scripts for your course. It could be marketing emails. I'd actually love it if you did a mix because for me, content writing exercises a different muscle than writing, for example, a marketing campaign. Now, if you're like, Gina, that sounds so big, just start with a couple of emails in terms of a marketing campaign. Maybe you work on a little bit of content and then you write an email to promote that content. So if you have a podcast, you're writing your script for your podcast, and then you're writing an email for your list, even if it's a small list, to let them know that it's live. The point here is to write messy and perfect action, right? That's one of our common themes. And if you're like, Gina, I just don't want to write. I can't find the motivation to do it. Let's find you the motivation. Maybe it's a list building exercise for you. Maybe you want to grow your list and your audience, so you agree to guest blog for someone. Or you have a friend or a colleague who has an opportunity to share your copy on their site. This is a great incentive for you to write and get it down on paper or in Google Docs. Maybe you have to write a different landing page for your site. Maybe you've got a course that needs a sales page, so you take a crack at it. Whatever it is, work on writing. Get it done. And by the way, a sidebar, a byproduct of this is that ideas will pop for you as part of this creative process. I have a done-for-you client right now who's really shifting to creator mode. He's decided to commit to writing more. He loves to write. He's really good at it. And he's making the time for it now. He's building that space in his schedule. And we met last week and he had so many great ideas, pop, about his brand, how he wanted to serve people, how he wanted to focus his courses. It was really powerful listening to him. And it was because he let himself go through this creative process and get in the flow. And he's doing the deep work. I love that episode that I did. This was way back, and I'll link to it in the show notes about what it takes to do deep work. So this can happen to you as well. For me, getting in the flow and doing the deep work, it's enabled me to get into a flow for the podcast, and it makes it that much easier. It's like exercising a muscle, like I said earlier, right? Once you get back into exercise, once you start lifting the weights or you're training for races, and it gets easier. If you practice, you're going to get in the flow. Step 1, get writing. Step 2, notice the nuances of your writing. What do you notice? Compare it to other emails or scripts or sales pages of folks that you're following. Compare it to competitors, right? This is a great exercise. What do you notice? I do this exercise sometimes with people about logos when they're first creating their logos, and I ask, well, what do you want your logo to represent? Like, take a look at other logos and let me know what you like and you don't like. And all of a sudden, you're the world's greatest logo critiquer, right? Oh, I don't like the angular nature of that logo. Oh, that grid is so blah. Or I don't like that font. All of a sudden, you're a critic. Now, I want you to be a critic, but a writing critic. And notice the differences of what makes you unique in terms of your voice. Do you use humor? Or maybe you're a little more dry. Do you use certain kinds of words? Do you use shorter, pithier sentences? Or you wax poetry and go long in these big paragraphs? That's your style. Think about your content. Do you like to always start with a story? Or give a lot of examples? Or maybe you like to bring in third-party research? Is there a certain way you structure your content? You guys know me. I like workshops. I like steps. I like parts. This is how my brain works. This is how my brain wants to break it down for you. This is the way I work. But not everyone works that way, right? And I want you to say to yourself, well, I work this way. Maybe not everyone does that, but this is what makes me unique. And in my industry, this is cool. And I stand out from the competition because X, right? So not everyone structures their podcast like I do, for example. I was listening to this podcast the other day, and this woman, this expert, was riffing beautifully, by the way, for 20 minutes about owning what you're worth. There was no steps. There was no parts. There was no action items. It was just a free flow, and it was beautiful. Like I was always in a trance listening to it. And then you're walking away with something powerful. I was motivated to act. But I'm never going to do that, right? I'm never going to do the 20-minute trance podcast because that's not me, and that's not why you guys tune in. But meanwhile, this expert was amazing at it. So I want you to pinpoint, what does that format look for you? What is that unique structure? What makes you so different? Here's another question. How do you talk to your audience? Is it more like friend to friend? Or are you like the mom who comes in and bakes the chocolate chip cookies, right? And gives that dose of support and love? Or are you like the general where you're taking them to task and you're giving them the hard truth? But they love it either way, right? Whether you're the mom or the general, they're listening to you for a reason. So who do you want to be in terms of your copy? By the way, if you're stuck on this, hire a writer for even a couple of pieces for you. You don't have to spend a lot of money. Say they write an article or a couple of emails. I promise you things will come to light. you'll say things like, oh, I would never say that, or, oh, I guess I do say that, right? It goes both ways. You'll realize what stands out for you in terms of your writing, and that's a great thing. I like to tell my new writers that I have a no BS style. And I had a new writer, this was a couple years ago, who just threw F-bombs around because that was interpretation. That was her interpretation of my no BS style. But I don't do F-bombs in copy. You have to work with me for a little bit. Like maybe if you get inside my 6-week accelerator, after the first few weeks, I'll start doing a F-bomb here and there, but not in my copy, like not for my podcast. I want to ease you guys in. There's a way to be no BS without throwing out F-bombs. But that's something that I had to realize for myself. Like, oh, here I am trying to give direction, and that's how somebody's interpreting. So that was an aha for me, and really where I wanted to take my copy for this podcast. All right, now you're ready for our final step, step 3. See, steps, right? Once you've made those realizations about what makes you different, you're ready to write your guiding principles. Okay, what are those? Exactly what they sound like. The rules or principles that will guide you writing any piece that you put out, from your marketing to your content, your scripts, anything you put inside your course. These are guidelines you're going to use to write like you, and then eventually to give to your writer to write like you. So I always like to start with, I must always blank. Okay, for me, for my guiding principles, I must always provide structure value. I must always give it to them straight. This is not a must always, but I love to bring up personal examples and stories. I always do that on my podcast, and I try to do it in my courses as well, and my talks. So get your I must always down. Then you're going to do I will never. I will never talk down to my audience. I will never provide fluff. I will never hide from my audience. Those are the guiding principles. Those are just a few that shape the copy that I put out. So now I want you to give it a try. Based on those observations you made in step 2, what are your guiding principles? What are your must always? What are your nevers? And write them down. Try 5 for each to start. Maybe you have 10 guiding principles. And I promise you will add to these as you go along and as you notice things. This will become your writing Bible. I have my guiding principles for anyone who writes for me. If I write for a client, I like to pull out these guiding principles as well. As you get more comfortable and as you hone your voice, you will solidify these guiding principles. Hopefully this has been helpful for you, this workshop. Stay tuned to next week. We'll have more on course creation and maybe more about the writing too. And again, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss one episode. Until next week, go create, be you and be brilliant, and get it done.